So we were reluctant to introduce, and then competitors would introduce them, and we would get pressure from customers saying, look, if you don't give it to me, I'll go somewhere else, and I know I can get it in the marketplace. So that's always a challenge around authenticity. And then the staffing and incentives. I mean, as our industry has grown, typically what we've done is we bring in bankers from conventional institutions who bring a lot of value in terms of knowing banking. They may not be steeped in the Shariah principles and the ethos behind Islamic finance, and that can often lead to the replication that we've talked about throughout this morning. And this is just a schematic to illustrate it. You know, is there a trade-off between market share and authenticity? That's the sort of provocative question. We in the industry have been acting, I would say, in a way that assumes this, or certainly as we've gained greater market share, we've become more nervous about the authenticity issues. Professor Bogle made reference to Tawaro. In the personal financing market of Saudi Arabia, which is by far the largest market, the Tawaro is the bread and butter structure. I can say that without hesitation. And it causes the most concern to Sharia scholars. But does it bring us market share? It most certainly does. And that's where some of these tensions lie. And so some of us would argue, and certainly hope, that this is not a necessary trade-off. You can be more authentic and you can have more market share. But it requires a lot more creativity and effort. Getting specifically to the Gulf, what is it about the GCC that's making it more Islamically inclined by way of investment? The first point is what I would say the rise of Islamic liquidity, meaning this, what I mean by this is the institutions that are by charter Islamic, by charter Sharia compliant. So when you have Islamic banks and Islamic funds, what have you, so they obviously have liquidity, they have cash, it has to be put somewhere. These didn't exist before. So then this creates a market for the investment products that are required. Second big point is the innovation in Islamic investment products and services. So we as an industry have come a long way in terms of what we can offer to our customers, and it makes it more and more viable. So whereas previously you might have had customers who said, look, I'd like to be Sharia compliant, but I don't find the products that meet my needs, they're now no longer facing the same challenge. They find that their needs are being met, hence they feel that it's viable for them to become Islamic customers. And the third point, which I find most profound, are the preference of internal and external stakeholders. I was speaking with, actually not myself, a colleague of mine was speaking with a board member of a conventional bank in the GCC. And they were talking about Islamic finance and potentially converting parts of the bank to Islamic, etc. And then this businessman, who was a very seasoned businessman, said, look, they were very much of a conventional banker, and they were comfortable with that. But he said, I must acknowledge that in my family, it is considered shameful to be a conventional banker. So, if someone came and proposed to one of our daughters or our nieces or relatives, and his source of income was conventional banking, we would think twice. We would get nervous about this. And this was a real thing. And similarly, one friend of mine who used to run a pension fund in the Gulf, he was talking about how pensioners are coming to him now more and more and saying, please give me assurance that my pension is halal for me, it's permissible for me. And of course, from a Shari perspective, because it's being gifted to him as an entitlement, it doesn't matter that it's being invested in a conventional way. So that's not the concern. But the broader concern, of course, is very valid, that these are the public funds of our country, and I want to know that they're being invested in a Sharia-compliant way because I practice Islam and I believe in Sharia. And these are important considerations, I think, that will be quite important in increasing the Sharia affinity and the adoption of Islamic finance and Islamic investment in particular. With regard to conventional institutions, again, very quickly, they followed three basic models. There's a product model where you offer Islamic services, but you don't have any particular business line. There's a window model. It's actually called Sadiq, is the Standard Chartered business, and HSBC Amana. And then you've got subsidiaries, which is in Malaysia required by statute, and it's very much seen as a best practice for segregating conventional and Islamic assets. And these are all strategies that are being pursued by conventional institutions. When we talk about the capabilities for Islamic finance, again, and we don't need to talk about this in detail, but the idea is that it's not just about Sharia structuring. Sheikh Yusuf was just talking about how you can find many different ways to structure that will conform with Sharia. If you want to have a Sharia-based proposition, it starts from having a strategy, a business design that is consistent with the values of Sharia. So if, for example, your business model is built on impulse credit. So get people, create a need, make people feel like they need a big screen TV to watch the World Cup final, and then here's the instant financing. And there is, I'm sure Frank, you've seen it. There's a product called Tamwil al-Fawri, instant financing. That you can get 30 minutes guaranteed by one of the Islamic banks. 30 minutes, you're approved or not. Tamwil al-Fawri from an Islamic bank, I'm not sure. Is this consistent with the basic principles we have? Then the product development I've talked about. The customer experience is very important as well. And I'll get into that in a later slide, so we can talk about that. When we talk about Islamic institutions and what are models of what you might call a Sharia-based institution, one of my favorite is an organization called Tabung Haji, which is a Malaysian institution. It's actually a shareholder in our company as well, but I assure you that's not why I have them here. Is that what they do is this is a Malaysian entity which is designed to help people save for Hajj. So customers put money into this entity, it invests that money in a Sharia compliant way. When they have enough money for Hajj, it arranges their Hajj. So its purpose itself is a very laudable one. It has an orientation towards savings and orientation. It's a real financial need. People want to go for Hajj, they live in Malaysia, it's far, it costs money. And it supports, actually it has a trade flow element to it, because again, ultimately these people will go to Saudi Arabia, they'll buy things, so on and so forth. So it's actually, and their tagline, Hayl al-Falah, come to success, rush to success, which is part of our call to prayer. So, clearly this is a Sharia-based proposition. It's a niche business, but it's quite large in Malaysia. And it represents the kinds of things that Islamic finance was designed to do. Another one, this comes from an example of a bank, a more, if you will, contemporary example in Brunei, is, banks often have these promotional campaigns where they say if you deposit this much money, you'll be automatically entered into a raffle. You could win an iPod, you could win a television, you could win something. What these guys have done is they've said, it's called the wish campaign. So you have to submit a form which talks about, your financial state, what it would be if you got this money, what you would do with it, how will this affect your plans, what will you do for your family as a result of this. So someone can say, I'm a fisherman, and if I get this money, I'll buy a boat, and therefore I'll be able to do good things for my family, build a business, etc. And then there's a committee that looks at these and includes members of their board and management, and then they give money to the submission that they find to be most compelling. And again, I think that's a good way of doing business rather than a random sort of lottery for awarding things, which we're trying to inculcate or reflect the Sharia-based values for which they stand. And with this, this is just the contact information for anyone who wants to speak further. Again, I really very much enjoyed the interactive part. Look forward to the questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Aamir.